All right. My name is Todd Wilkinson. I'm the Vice Flotilla Commander of Flotilla 5-2 of the United States Coast Guard Auxiliary, located in Springfield, Missouri. And today I'm interviewing Mr. Jack Hamlin, who was born on October 15th of 1921. We are here at the Midtown Carnegie Branch Library of the Springfield Greene County Library System in the Edge. And Brian Grubbs, the director of the local history and genealogy department, is here with Jack and myself for this oral history interview. And we'll go ahead and get started. Jack, will you tell us a little bit about yourself, where you're from, a little bit about your family and your education?
Well, I was born in Springfield, Missouri. I lived there all my life, 94 years of age. Went to grade school in Springfield at Bowerman School. Then I graduated to junior high school and went to Central High School. Graduated in 1939 with a class of about 642. That's quite a large class to graduate. And in 1939, I had been a baseball player in Central High School, and I signed a contract with the New York Yankees Farm Club by Tom Greenway, the old Yankee scout. And I wanted to be a baseball player, so I played the year with the Joplin Miners in Class CC.
I didn't know that. So you played with them until you enlisted?
Well, I played 2 years. In my second year, I caught a disease called rheumatic fever.
Mm-hmm.
And rheumatic fever, I was very lucky. At that time, there was 4 young children from ages 12 to my age of 17 that had caught this rheumatic fever. I was the only one that survived. And the reason I survived, I understand, my doctor was Dr. Max Fitch. And they invented what they call a sulfonamide pill. And he gave me that pill, and believe this or not, my doctor stayed with me 2 nights to make sure that I lived.
Really?
And I did, I survived. But when the war broke out, I went down to enlist in the Naval Air Corps. But I found out that I had an enlarged heart caused by the rheumatic fever. I did not get into the Naval Air Corps. I had 2 friends of mine I'd played baseball with in high school. They were going into the U.S. Coast Guard. And I also had an uncle suggested to me one time, Jack, I understand you didn't make the Air Corps. You ought to think about the United States Coast Guard. I had a friend who was there. He really enjoyed the service that he spent. I joined the Coast Guard in February the 2nd, 1942.
Tell us a little bit more about your first days in the Coast Guard. What was it like?
Wonderful. Part-time, we trained with the Marines. We went to St. Louis, and then from St. Louis, we went directly to New Orleans, in Algiers, where we took our training. And all we did there was we were there for about 60 days. And they knew when I got there, I played baseball, and I had the lucky chance of being on the Coast Guard baseball team. So the weekends, I did have kind of freedom, along with the training. But you can see I enjoyed the 60 days that I spent in New Orleans training.
And that was a officially sanctioned Coast Guard baseball team that played
Yes, it was.
exhibition games?
Yes, sir. We played games just around New Orleans, of course, races.
What was your record?
Well, I don't remember the record, but our team wasn't too good, just the enjoyment of getting out.
Yeah.
Then when I left New Orleans, I was sent to Boston, Massachusetts. And while I was in Boston, Massachusetts, I did harbor duty there. And I couldn't tell you the exact date, but I was there probably about 3 months. And they asked me if I'd like to go to a boatswain's mate school down in New York. And I said, yes, I'd be glad to go. It's not a commissioned officer, just a petty officer school.
Mm-hmm.
And the Coast Guard was just training for handling small boats was the main idea. While we were there, I found out the commander of the post was Jack Dempsey, the old heavyweight boxing champion, and he was our commander at the boatswain mate school. And also, the athletic director there was a boy called Joe Vogel, and he had played football at State Teachers College in Springfield, Missouri, and he just happened to know that I was in New Orleans at this training camp, so that made awful nice for me in Manhattan, I mean.
Tell us a little bit about your training. Do you think you were sufficiently prepared when you reported to your first duty station?
It was pretty rough as far as I'm concerned, but just the fundamentals. There wasn't anything extraordinary that we actually trained for, just handling small boats.
Mm-hmm.
And I never handled a boat in my life. Hadn't even been on a boat outside of fishing.
Mm-hmm.
But I enjoyed it very much.
What do you remember most about your instructors?
Number one was a cocky little thing. He was an ex-Marine, and he wanted to put himself above everybody else. He was good though, but he when you listened to him, you knew what he was talking about.
Tell us about the ships that you served on, or the stations that you were at.
Very few. After I left Bozeman Med School, I was sent to Newport, Rhode Island. At Newport Island, I was put on what we called an 83-foot Coast Guard cutter. Now, at that time, we had about 10 stationed in Newport, and all we did was we did submarine duty. We'd go outside of Newport Harbor, we'd go from Block Island down to Long Island Sound, just back and forth. Thank goodness we never saw any German ships or anything. I don't know what we would have done. We had one 20 millimeter gun on there and eight depth charges.
And that was right about the time that the U-boats were operating off of the
Absolutely.
Atlantic coast. And
You could read the paper, and there was a lot of them, and there was several of the German agents that you'd see by the paper had gotten off submarines and had come to shore. And as a matter of fact, they were caught by Coast Guardmen up around the New England shore, if I remember.
Did you ever come into any contact with members of the Coast Guard Temporary Reserve who were on picket duty on the sailboats?
Absolutely, not on the sailboats, but a short duty I had. I was sent up to Fall River, Massachusetts. That's just off Narragansett Bay and on the Taunton River. And there was a lieutenant commander there who was in the auxiliary. And he was a fine old gentleman as far as that concerned. But he had a real nice boat. And we had just a crew of 4 on his boat going up and down the Taunton River. And then we also did kind of duty by the Quonset Air Base. Able Air Base was right near Newport. And if anything happened there, like a aviator had gone down, we'd go out and find him and rescue him and bring him back in.
What was your opinion of the auxiliary in general?
Wonderful. They were really good. As a matter of fact, they had about 3, and all 3 of them were officers, and they had handled boats, and they hadn't been in the service, but they went in the auxiliary to help the Coast Guard out with the handling of the small boats, and that was appreciated by all of us.
Very good. Well, of course, one of the things that you're well known for is your service with Rescue Flotilla 1
Yes, sir.
during Operation Neptune, which was the naval component of Operation Overlord, the D-Day landings. Can you tell us a little bit more about how you came to be with Rescue Flotilla 1 on Normandy?
Yes, I'll be glad to. We got orders. There was going to be 60 Coast Guard cutters taken from the East Coast. We were to meet in Baltimore to be put aboard Liberty ships to send over. We didn't know where he was going to the Pacific, or we didn't know he was going to go to Europe. Well, we found out later on time that when they picked up our Coast Guard cutters and put them aboard, put 2 Coast Guard cutters on one Liberty ship, we were going to go to England for the invasion of Normandy. Well, they only took 4 of the crew members. The rest, there were 13 members on each one of the Coast Guard cutters, 83 foot long. They would send the others over by transports to England, and I went along with our boat on the Liberty ship.
And where did you end up being stationed at?
We ended up in Poole, England. That's just south of Southampton. And all the 60 Coast Guard cutters were stationed there.
And this was in what time period? What approximately?
We got there about maybe the first week of April of 1944. And of course, we still got there. We didn't do any training at all for a while. Then we got our instructions, really what we were going to do. And we were given our instructions that we were going to escort all the convoys across the channel. And what we were told we were going to do, you're just going to escort them. You're going to stay out of their way because they're going to be going pretty slow. And it would take us, well, of course, it's 70 some odd miles across the channel. Well, I can tell you one little story about going across the channel. I knew on LST 50, there was a boy from Springfield, Missouri, that I'd played football and baseball with in high school. His name was Ralph Carter. And after he got out of high school, he went on to Missouri, was a football player there for 4 years. Well, he was on LST 50. Now you can imagine how dark it is when we're taking off from Poole, England, meeting the convoy across the channel. There's over 5,000 ships now in the channel going across. I'm doing convoy duty in our little cutter, going back and forth. We're only going about 10 knots. The convoy's only going about 10 knots. I come along at LST, I look up, and I can see in the dark LST 50. I believe it, I asked our skipper, I said, do you mind if I go here and call a fellow that I know on that boat? The skipper said, why, yes. With my loud mouth, I got a hold of him, And I yelled up and I said, "Do you have a Ralph Carter?" He's a lieutenant. He's in command this LST. "Oh, yes, we have it. Who are you?" I gave him my name. And finally he came to the gunnel and yelled down, "Who is it?" And I said, "Jack Hamlin's." He said, "You little," what did he call me? He said, "What are you doing down there in that rowboat?" And this is the truth. I said, "Ralph Carter, I'm a seaman, and you're a commander. I'll tell you one thing. If your LST gets sunk, you'll be the last man that I'll pick out of this channel." Now, I could hear the people, honestly, on this LST kind of laugh about that. Never saw him again, but he did survive, and he got out of the FBI when he got out of the service. And he had a stroke, several years back, and never survived every stroke. I never saw him again, but I'll never forget meeting Ralph Carter and all that 5,000 ships going across the channel.
Tell us a little bit more about what you were doing during that time. What were your specific tasks on board the 83-footer?
Well, we was in pool, nothing but painting and doing a little exercise. And that's just about it. We didn't do any swimming, we didn't get any instructions on, that I can remember, of life-saving at all. We were supposed to know that from the training we received in New Orleans. They thought we were prepared anyway.
And then when you were going across, what were you doing as you were?
Well, as I say, we were following the convoy across. And my first convoy duty, we were to stop about 10 miles offshore at the landing barge point of where all they kept the hospital ships and the big transports. They kept them 10 miles offshore. We would just stay around the transports because they were thinking at that time that's where most of the casualties would happen. But they were so far out, they kept them out of the reach of the German guns, big guns. All right? And that was the reason the hospital ships stayed out so far. And I couldn't tell you this, I was only a seaman, but our skipper got orders some way or another that he was being transferred from Utah Beach to Omaha Beach. So we were transferred over there. I don't remember how, when, or how. I don't recollect any of that. I do know we went to Utah and were given orders there, Omaha, to follow the little landing barges in. And they told us, now when you're going in with them, stay completely out of their way. I said, the landing barges have orders that if they got anybody overboard, they're not to stop to pick them up. That is going to be your duty as rescue flotilla. So we were nothing more really than lifeguards or a medic trying to save the people in the water.
Tell us a little bit more about the crews on the boats. You know, we were talking before the interview about the picture of the crew with the skull and crossbones on their helmets. Tell us a little bit more about what your boat used as their insignia.
We had an insignia on the side. Tom Butler was a good little painter. He was an Irishman from Chicago. And he painted a Hitler. And we had him down on his back. And we had a sailor with his foot on his neck. That was our little wing of the Coast Guard cutter. And we had that painted on both sides. But that was our emblem. And we were called Skidoo number 23 was the name of our boat. Skidoo number 23.
So the morale was really high with
Very
all
good,
these.
very good. We had a wonderful crew. There was 3 of us, the smallest ones aboard. And the smallest ones weighed from 140 to 155 pounds. The other boys had good-sized men. They gave us orders, if you don't mind, we'll put the small boys into the water. We'll put you on the life belt, put you on a line, and you wouldn't go out no more than 30 feet or 40. You couldn't go very far because the channel at that time was generally running about 15 to 20 knots. It was the old North Sea coming down, and the water was no doubt 48 degrees. So you couldn't stay in the water very long. But the duties for the boys that would go into the water, and we'd only go in there naturally. If we saw a landing barge was hit and their boys were drowning, they got blown up and going in, they were in the water, we would rush right in, pick as many as we could out of the water, and have them hoisted aboard our Coast Guard cutter, and then put back out of the way. After we got, and the orders there, I don't know how it came about, whether we had 10 aboard, 5 aboard, or 3 aboard. But if there was so much danger, we had to hurry, get them out to the hospital ships. We had one, his name was Dick McPhail. He was a lieutenant, got the Navy Cross. His Coast Guard cutter, with the crew of 13 that day at Omaha Beach, he saved over 100 men in the first 6 hours. Picked them out of the water and take them to the hospital ship.
And how many did your crew save?
You know, I've asked some of the boys, there's only one still living that I know of, and he was in bad shape the last I heard about 3 years ago. Richard Hunt was his name. And we all talked about it, and nobody asked to keep count. We estimated no more than 20. I've told people, I thought it was only 2 trips we made. It was so far out and the channel was so rough. After picking him up, it took a long time, believe me, to get him in the water, get him to the boat, and get him aboard to take him out. So I don't know how many the other cutters made at Omaha Beach, how many trips they made. But I only thought 2, but the other boys that I have talked to that are going now tell me there's about 3 trips we made back and forth.
What was your reaction to Omaha Beach? Can you describe a little bit about your feelings? What it was like that day?
To tell you the truth, I'm not a hero. I was never scared though. I was a good swimmer, and I knew I'd be safe as far as that. The only thing got me was seeing somebody wounded, somebody hurt. And of course, they still had a uniform, and you don't know whether he had a broken arm, broken leg, or it was missing. And the only one you could see was in the water, one that was seriously injured and they were dying, that you couldn't help. And the main thing was to get the ones that we could save. Now, during D-Day, at the whole 60 cutters, there were 5 beaches, and we had this all divided up between the 3 beaches of the English and the Canadians, and then the Americans on Utah and Omaha. We saved over 1,486 men in 6 hours that day, and 1 female nurse was blown off of LST in the water.
And did you come into contact with her? Was that your boat?
No, that was another boat. I forget who it was. I think it was an engine Meeker. I read the story in E-K-E-R that his off a Sword Beach to save the English nurse.
Did you get to work with very many British Commonwealth personnel?
No, I did not really. When we were stationed in Poole, England, there was none of them there. None of us. All U.S. Army were stationed around Poole.
Mm-hmm. And of course, you were operating off of Utah and Omaha, so you didn't really get a...
We didn't come. And as a matter of fact, people have asked me, did you get onto Omaha Beach? I did not. Till 2 days later, I finally went ashore. But we didn't get... The closer I can even imagine we got to Omaha Beach was anywhere from 500 yards to 1,000 yards. So we actually didn't get in where they talk about the blood in the water and all that. We didn't see that. Or we didn't see all the hundreds of bodies along the Omaha Beach. We didn't see that, thank goodness.
Were any of your crew wounded?
None at all. Of all 60 cutters, none of them received any injuries that I know of. I've never read about any or heard about any. But we did lose 2 of them in a storm. It had a bad storm later on. And the 2 of them was washed ashore, and they were repaired later on. But they did receive damage.
What was your reaction coming ashore on D+2? What was the second day? What was your reaction to that?
I tell you the truth, we didn't get to go very far. I was with we had picked up Colonel Stewart, and he was the head of the 60 Coast Guard cutters. And we had picked him up on the second day of the invasion, and he was aboard. We went into Le Havre, and we saw a pilot coming down. We were just off the beaches, and the second day we saw a pilot parachuting down from a plane, and he was headed to Le Havre harbor. Well, we got instructions to go in and pick him up, which was fine. Well, that's the closest that we got to really being shot at or destroyed. We did get shot at by the batteries just off of Le Havre. But we were scared of the E-boats. There were E-boats in Le Havre, and we were afraid they would come out. Their E-boats were like our PT boats, only faster than the Navy PT boats. Well, that's the only fear we actually had. But we did save this Canadian pilot. He had a big scratch on his leg, and one of our boys doctored him all up, and we got him to a hospital ship. But we did save his life in Le Havre. And
you were telling me before the interview that one of your shipmates stayed in touch with him after the war?
Joe Ciano, the machinist, we took him to the hospital ship and had time enough to talk to him for the boys, and they got his name and everything else. And I got his name too, but lost it. But anyway, Joe Ciano told me in a letter later on that he had gotten contact with him after the war, and they corresponded 2 or 3 different times. But how thankful he was that we pulled him out of the water.
Imagine most of the folks that you pulled out of the water were grateful to that.
It's funny, but I have 2 plaques on my wall at home of men that we pulled out of the water and saved. And I got to meet, one of them came from Colorado because his daughter was married to the superintendent school in Plato, Missouri.
Wow.
And they had him come to the school and had me come to school, and both of us make speeches about D-Day. He was in the 29th Infantry.
Did you know that he was coming that
No,
day?
no, but not until his daughter wrote me and said, my father knows all about, he was there, and he said he'd like to talk to you because the Coast Guard picked him up out of the water. Didn't know if it was your boat or not, but he knew it was the Coast Guard cutter, picked him up and saved his life. So he came from Colorado. I met him at Plato, Missouri. We spoke to the high school there, had a wonderful meeting for 2 days.
Did you, and then we'll talk a little bit more about, your trips back to France since D-Day
Yes.
here in just a few minutes, but did you get to meet anyone that was saved by the Coast Guard during those, at the anniversary programs in later years?
You mean back in the States here?
Well, actually, when you returned to France for the 50th and 60th anniversaries, did you meet anyone?
Oh,
that
yes,
was-
at the Admiral, the Coast Guard Admiral. Well, on the 50th anniversary, 1994, I was invited to England by the Queen of England to have dinner with the Queen of England. There were 75 of survivors of D-Day, Army and all that, for U.S. soldiers and Navy, invited to have dinner with the Queen, so which I did. I went back, had dinner with the Queen, had a wonderful time, and that was on the 50th anniversary.
And you were telling me about the Queen Mother, you met the Queen
Oh,
Mother
she-
too?
They had, at Eisenhower's headquarters at Portsmouth, where we had the banquet with the Queen, they had tents outside. It was raining that day, it always is in England. And the Queen Mother, they had 5 tents for Australians, New Zealand, Canada, Britain, and then the U.S. Army. All right? The Queen Mother came to see all of us. And she had an umbrella and her entourage with her, helping us, escorting her. And she came to see the 75 of us in our tent, having cocktails. And I didn't, like I told you, I didn't know whether to bow to her, kiss her on the cheek, or anything. But she was gracious to us. I loved her. It was the Queen Mother, not the Queen, but the Queen Mother of the Queen. She had been Queen. And she was, what a darling she was. She had to be about 90 years of age at that time. But she came to see us.
We'll come back to that here in just a few minutes. After Le Havre, what did you do? What was your assignment after the D-Day landings were over?
We had to go back to England because we ran we carried 900 gallons of fuel. But we left it to the chief machinist mate to tell us when we're out of fuel, we got to go back because they had no way of giving the gas over there. They hadn't got the gas line underground on the channel. So we go back and made only one more convoy from England back to France. Then about staying back in England, I went to London 3 or 4 times, and when the bombing sent the little rockets over there, tearing everything up. I was sent back to Cherbourg, France, to do patrol duty in Cherbourg, France. That was our duty till, we went there in October, and I stayed there up until about April of '45.
What was that duty like?
Very good. Really had a wonderful time there. We only had a crew of 8. We sent 5 of the boys home to prepare to go to the West Coast to prepare for the invasion of Japan. They were going to do the same thing like we were doing at Normandy for Japan. But so they kept it, I was in charge, and they kept it just a crew of 8. Well, Christmas Eve of 1944, I had met a big sergeant in the Quartermaster Corps. And he liked to come down and we'd have a drink or something and we'd play cards and have a little fun. So he said, Jack, Christmas Eve, he says, I work at the hospital up there. I'm a quartermaster and I work with a bunch of nurses, French nurses. Let's have a party on your cutter. And I could have been court-martial, but I said, okay, fine with me. So I said, I'm going to send 4 of my crew ashore. I picked the 4 best looking boys. I said, you guys got duty tonight. Nothing's going to happen. So you go ashore. So I kept the other 3 myself and this army boy. He brought down 2 good-looking nurses. He brought down turkey, and he brought down all the wine we wanted to drink aboard our boat. Well, he laughed out. But about 6 o'clock, we got a call. You got to go out. There's something happening at Buoy 5, just outside Le Havre. Well, it was a Leopoldville transport with the 22nd Infantry Division, Black Panther Division, had been hit by a torpedo. 2,200 of them aboard. Well, I took the girls, put them ashore, and then we took off for the Buoy 4. We got there, of course, the the soldiers were standing up there. I can see them, they were about 20 to 25 feet above my deck, up on the transport. They all had their the big woolen overcoats on. And I thought, oh my Lord, but it's cold, because Christmas Eve. And finally, we got orders to be, the ship was beginning to sink. There were other rescue boats also, and there was one, the Brilliant, the HMS Brilliant, a corvette of the English Navy went alongside of them and picked up several hundred of the boys off there then. And there was a boy in Springfield, Missouri that I met, and he was one of them that jumped from the transport over to this British ship. The only reason he saved his life, that he jumped about 50, he was a track star in Hannibal, Missouri, Troy, Missouri, excuse me, and he jumped all the way to the transport over. He said, I hit the deck over there, hard as steel deck, but it saved my life. The other boys tried to jump, and they got caught. The boats were coming together, and they got, terrible to say, they got smashed. They just couldn't jump that far.
Was your friend, the quartermaster sergeant, on board with you while you were doing that? Or
Yes, he was with us, and he got, as I understand, he got the Silver Star. We asked him to go with us out there to help us. What are we going to do? Because I only had the crew of 4. So he did go with us out there. And we made 2 trips, and altogether we probably saved 50 to 75 off the transport. They lost 800 and some odd that night. Died.
Was that fairly typical at that time to have a U-boat still sinking transports like that?
Right. Sure was. There was another one up the coast just a little bit that was sunk the night before. And you know, that just about the time that Glenn Miller was lost also.
Oh, that's right. That's right.
We knew nothing about it, of course, later on, but after the war, but that's when he...
And of course, the theory is now that that may have actually been friendly fire.
That's what they think.
The plane
That's
was hit.
absolutely what they think, because it was nighttime and he's going over it.
Well, speaking of the channel, since we're talking about the channel, we were talking, of course, before the interview as well about the liberation of the Channel Islands and your participation in that, the German-occupied British territory just off of the French coast. Can you tell us a little bit more about that, what your experience was like?
What I remember about that, we had orders to take the commander of the Coast Guard at Cherbourg Harbor was L.D. Ard, a wonderful fellow. And he got orders that he was to go to Guernsey Island along with two PT boats and another boat, a naval boat. We'd be the first ones there at the Guernsey Island. They had just surrendered. The Germans had just surrendered on the Guernsey Island. Now, we went there, and I can remember taking pictures. And as I told you, I wish I'd saved a copy of the pictures, but I sent these pictures to the archives of the Coast Guard. And I had a letter there also verified that we were the first Coast Guard, or first Americans to be on Guernsey Island after they surrendered.
What was the reaction of the residents of Guernsey Island to seeing Americans?
We met the young people, and the first thing they told us, Godric, thanks to you, said the last food we had was eating dead dogs and cats.
Did you come into any contact with any German prisoners of war at that time?
We could see them, absolutely. I took pictures of a bunch of, they had a little naval barge. It was tied up. We tied alongside of it. And I took pictures of all these Germans. And I asked them to pose. They didn't mind.
Right.
And I got set them up and I posed them, and I had this picture. And I said, I wish I could save that picture. Anyway.
Did you stay on Guernsey long, or did you go back?
No, we were just there for the day. No, we went back.
And that would have been in the spring of 1945. So.
Yes, sir. I couldn't tell you when it was, but right.
But spring of 45 will do
Yes,
for
sir.
our purposes. What happened after that? We're getting close to VE Day. What?
Going back to Cherbourg, and I can't tell you the exact time, but I think it's around just about, probably September that I was sent back to the States. And we thought at the time, well, the war was about over. And they told us we had no chance that we would go to the Pacific. We were going to do that. We had our points and all that. So that's all we needed.
Did you think about making a career in the Coast Guard?
You know, that's a funny thing. Somebody told me, and he was an officer, would you like to go to the academy? And I said no. Now, why I said no, I wanted to get home. But and whether he was serious or not, whether he could even got me into the Coast Guard Academy.
Mm-hmm.
But he asked me, would you like to attend the Coast Guard Academy?
And you were done.
I was done, that was it. I wanted to get home.
Real quickly, tell us a little bit about your relationship with not only your chiefs, but also your officers. What were the relations like with?
Very good, really very good. Even before I went overseas, our commander and I, we were in New York for a while, coming down from Newport Island, we stopped in New York, then on down to Curtis Bay, and we got aboard the Liberty ships. But we were together all the time.
And you
Very
felt-
nice. The officers, everyone were wonderful.
Did you notice any difference between reserve officers versus active duty, the Coast Guard Academy graduates?
No, I sure did not. No, to me, I didn't. Matter of fact, I didn't know too many of the Coast Guard boys, Coast Guard Academy graduates.
Mhm.
Most of them I knew they were just recruit college graduates, such as that.
And here's a really popular question that always comes up. What was your interaction like with other branches of the services? What was your relationship like with the Army and Navy personnel you met? Was there any rivalry between them?
A little bit with the Navy. With the Navy, when I was in Newport, Rhode Island, there was a little bar, and I'm not much of a fighter. And if I get the first punch in, that's fine. I'll get up and run. Anyway, there was a little bar there, and the Navy came in there quite a bit because they had a place on down.
Mhm.
And we were, in a matter of fact, where we harbored our boat, our little 83-footer, we just did almost next door, no more than 100 yards away from this bar. But in the bar, there's a brick building next door to it, and then there's a door right in here that goes right up that brick building. Well, this door is a side door going out of that bar. Well, this one night I had a few many beers, I guess, and we got in a little bit of an argument. They called us hooligans, and we called them a few names and second and forth. Had a couple of guys with me were pretty good size. They could handle themselves. But there was 3 or 4 of the Navy boys were pretty tough too. Well, the Army got going pretty good, and I did. I got my first punch in, and I headed out this door because I knew there was a brick wall on the other side.
Mhm.
I opened that door, and I got through it, and one of those Navy guys come after me, and he hit that brick wall and broke his nose.
Oh.
Now, I didn't know this till 3 or 4 days later. We're back at that bar, and the guy was sitting there, and I apologized to him. I remember him from the fight, and did you hit that brick wall? He said, that's a true story, it's hard to believe, but that brick wall, I'll never forget. I'm lucky I knew that door, I'd going out there, because I'd go out this door, I'd go around to the brick building, I'd right to my boat. So lucky that guy out there, they would whip me for sure.
Oh, but certainly lives up to the traditions of the.
And I had a
the
good time
Navy.
also. While I was there, I played football
Mhm.
a little bit. I met a fellow up at Fall River, Massachusetts, and he was getting ready to go to the Naval Air Corps. And I met him at a gym in Newport, Rhode Island, where I was working out one day, playing basketball, and he said, "You play football?" And I said, "I played a little bit in high school." He said, we play for the New Bedford Whalers, New Bedford, Massachusetts, semi-pro big football team.
Mhm.
So we got a pretty good team, so we played the Army bases around and so forth. Would you like to play football with us? I did. I played with them, but mercifully, he just beat the holy heavens out of me. I weighed about 155 pounds. It was worse than but I went ahead and played anyway. We had about 4 games.
Oh, wow. Did you stay in touch with your family during that time?
My mother's, wrote my mother all the time. I certainly did.
Of course, other popular questions that people always want to know, what was your pay like and what was the food like?
Food was wonderful. It really was. We had a little cook on our boat, and we had just a small little stove and a small refrigerator, but he fixed everything good. Everything very good. We were satisfied.
And he was well supplied for the most part?
Oh, yeah, well, so, as a matter of fact, when we in Sherbrooke, the big old transport, the Wakefield, came in, and Rainey was the captain. His name was Rainey, and he's from Springfield, Missouri. His brother was Springfield, Missouri, and I knew Rainey because he was an old basketball and baseball referee, and I'd known him when I was playing in high school, but I didn't ever get to meet him, but he was Mr. Rainey, and when they came in, the Wakefield transport, we'd go alongside, they got sodas, all the food they wanted. Fresh ice cream, we had everything. Coca-Cola, anything we wanted. Why, this big old transport was sending food to us.
That's a good lead into the next question. What was Liberty like for you, especially when you're overseas?
I still got a picture of a French girl that I went with from the nurses. They brought down for Christmas Eve.
Mhm.
She was a beautiful girl. Jacqueline was her name. And I say this, but I named one of my daughters after her instead of anybody else. Jacqueline, she's a doll. I still have a picture of her.
Did you all explore the coast there and did you go out to the villages?
LDR, the commander, had an LCVP, small boat. And he said, "Jack, anytime you need that boat, take it." we used to take it, Tom Butler, because he could speak a little French, he'd take the other nurse, and we'd take that boat, we'd go up around the harbor to small towns.
Oh.
So see, I had it pretty easy while the war was going on.
Can you recall any particularly, well, we've had a lot of humorous events so far. Is there any other stories that you can think of that you'd like to
I'm afraid
share?
that's about as far as I can go.
Well, do you recall the day that your service ended, when you finally were discharged? What was that day like?
Well, it had to be in November of '45 that I finally went back to St. Louis and got my orders that you're through. And I hit it. They said, if you wait till about 5 o'clock in the evening, we'll get a bus and send you home. I said, no, I'm ready to go. So I went and hitchhiked all the way home. And just by lucky, somebody picked me up just outside, somewhere in St. Louis, and drove me all the way home. He was going somewhere in Arkansas, and he drove me all the way to Springfield, Missouri, to my house.
Where were you discharged at?
In St. Louis.
In St. Louis. And so he gave you a ride home.
Mm-hmm.
What did you do in those next days and weeks after you got back to Springfield? What was life like?
Well, looking for an old girlfriend, and she'd already got married, so didn't find that at home. And then we all meet at the Colonial Hotel. They had a nice place there,
Mm-hmm.
and most of the veterans would go there and have a few beers and discuss, tell lies, tell stories. But we enjoyed it. But it was great.
Did you work or go back to school?
Went back to school, law school. I went back to Drury College, got my degree. Then I went to law school. I started out in Missouri University, wasn't doing too good. Had a chance to go to California to play baseball with a fellow by the name of Larry Barton. I knew his sister. And Larry Barton used to play for the old St. Louis Browns.
Mm-hmm.
And he had heard that I was back home. And I knew I was going to go to law school. And I just finished law school. And he said, would you come out and play baseball? So I hadn't finished law school, I'll take that back. But he said, would you come out to California and play? I need another infielder. I said, okay, I went out and I played there about 6, 7 weeks. Wasn't doing too much good. My dad gave me a call. He said, how you doing, son? I said, Dad, not too good. He said, well, I have to go to Nashville on a lawsuit. He was a lawyer. I said, okay. He said, you come and go with me. I said, I'll be home. So I got a ride home. A friend of mine called Jim Botch. I found out he was coming to Springfield. Rode all the way back to Springfield to him. My dad took me to Nashville. He said, while we're here, I'm going to take you over to Lebanon, Tennessee, where I went to law school. A law school in the name of Cumberland University.
Oh, okay.
And I stayed there for 2 years. Played football and baseball there. And we played against Florida State, played against Vanderbilt, just a small university. We did pretty good, beat Florida State 6-0. My dad wanted me to get a degree from Missouri University, come back to Missouri.
Mm-hmm.
So I took my 3rd year of law back in Springfield. Well, I graduated, but I never passed the bar. I took the bar examination and I flunked it. So
Really?
I gave it up, went to the insurance business, and that's what I ended up being, an insurance man.
And you worked as an insurance salesman in Springfield
Rest of the time.
the rest of the time?
Never sorry. I don't think I lasted much being a lawyer. Some judge had thrown me out of court.
And you were active in politics too?
Oh, I got to politics. I'm a Democrat. It's pretty hard down here to be elected, but I was elected to the state representative for a couple of terms. And then after I got defeated, they wanted me to run for Senate. I got whipped badly with Jack Curtis, a wonderful fella. And Governor Hearns was governor then. He felt sorry for me, so he gave me the job of the head of the Department of Revenue.
And you worked in that for several years?
I worked 4 years for the Department of Revenue, head of the Department of Revenue.
And you mentioned the Colonial Hotel and some of the veterans that would gather.
Yes, sir.
Did you join any of the formal veterans organizations like the VFW or the Legion after the war?
American Legion, North American Legion's all, yes, still a member. Yes, sir.
And also a member of the Coast Guard Combat Veterans
That's right,
Association, which you're an active member and
very active.
still talk to. How many are left from your crew and from your unit?
There's only one left, Richard Hunt. He was in real bad shape 3 years ago, and I lost contact. He was drowning around Nashville someplace, but I ran into him on the street one time, and he was in ill health then, and I'm pretty sure he's gone by now, because he was in bad shape. I feel I'm the only one left.
Tell us a little bit about your experiences going back to France. We know that you've been back several times. The 5th time is coming up this spring,
The
correct?
5th time, see, I went back, I was there for D-Day, then I was there for the 50th anniversary, and I went for the 70th anniversary, 71st anniversary, and I'm going back this time for the 72nd. Well, last year, I was honored by the French government, I was given the Legion of Honor. That's the highest award they give to an Allied soldier that participated in the D-Day landings.
And you met the Commandant of the Coast Guard?
I met the Commandant and he and his wife, and we walked up a hill to where we have the Coast Guard plaque, a monument to the Rescue Flotilla Number 1, the landing. We had a picture taken there, and on my page, he sent me a picture of it, and on there he says, "You outrun me up the hill." Whatever his last name is. Very nice, very nice.
I'm sure our viewers will want to know what you're planning to do in a couple of weeks, because this is just
All right.
impressive. Tell us about that.
I'm going back again. I go back the 31st of May. I'm going back again this time with Colonel Stark, who lives in Springfield. He's a lawyer, and he's going to go over and jumps for. I went with him 2 years ago. He and the Golden Wings, and I was going to jump over there. We didn't get permission. Tandem jump, I'm talking about.
Mm-hmm.
They wanted me to jump with them. Well, then I came back to States, and they arranged for me to go down to Tulsa to jump, to parachute jump down to Tulsa. I was down there for 3 days, and the weather wouldn't allow us. I had a birthday in October last year, my 94th birthday, and they presented me with another certificate. So we're going to jump this year, tandem jump. So we're going to jump here in Springfield sometime this summer. And Colonel Stark, we had dinner the other night. He said, "Jack, I've been having trouble with my leg, a sciatic nerve." He said, "As soon as that leg's cured, we're jumping." I said, "All right, you get your man I'm jumping with from Tulsa, and we'll go anytime here in Springfield you want to jump."
Are you going to jump at the downtown airport or the?
We don't know which.
Don't know yet.
I'll leave that to him.
And of course, that leads into another question. You're also involved with the 506th Parachute Battalion Association and the Band of Brothers miniseries, of course. Why don't you tell us a little more about
When
that?
I go back to Normandy, I stay in the Band of Brothers headquarters, which they took over on June the 8th, 1944. And when I go over there, the people that own it now, the name is Chapman. They're English. He was a physicist in England. He retired, and he moved over to Normandy. And he bought the old headquarters, barracks, the Band of Brothers, where Colonel Zink and Dick Winters were headquarters right there in Angleville, Rue Plains.
Mhm.
That's just off of Omaha Beach and Utah Beach. And they're wonderful to me. I stayed there 2 years ago. I stayed there last year, and they're waiting me to come back this year and stay with them again. And I stayed last year with 101st. There was a bunch of 101st Airborne Screaming Eagles, but they're Vietnam boys.
Mhm.
And one of the boys is named Dick Winters also. Now this is Dick Winters' nephew, the original Dick Winters of the Band of Brothers movie. And he's a wonderful fellow. He works at the Pentagon in Washington, D.C. And he's going to meet me there again. He's going to be my roommate again this year at the Band of Brothers headquarters in Angleville.
Tell us a little bit more about the ceremony that you went through to become a member, an honorary member of the Band of Brothers.
While I'm there, there's one boy still was the original Band of Brothers. His name is Jim Pee Wee Martin. He was a paratrooper in the 506. So he's there. So they said, "Jack, we have a club called the BBBC." He said, "We like you. We want you to be a Screaming Eagle on the hunt for. We want you to be a Band of Brothers." Now, tell you what I got to do. Well, I used to drink pretty heavily, and I tried to drink the whiskey, couldn't handle it. Tell you the story, but they said, "You got to get in this old bathtub." Now here it is, this old barracks, and this is the original bathtub that Colonel Zink had during the war, and it's all rusted. I mean, it's wobbly, and it's in the old bathroom part of it, still in the bathroom. And it said, "You got to get in that bath." I said, "I'm not going to sit down in a pair of white pants on." I said, "I don't want to sit down in that bathtub. It's corroded. Sit down in that bathtub." Well, I didn't. I stood up and got a jigger of whiskey. I took that jigger of whiskey. It was the first drink of whiskey I've had in 30 years. It tasted good. They took my picture, and it made me, certified me to the Band of Brothers. So I got that picture. I should have brought it and showed it to you. I do. They sent me the picture of me in the bathtub.
And also, too, I wanted to bring up Valerie, because
Yes.
we both know Valerie. Why don't you tell us a little bit more about her efforts and
2 years ago, she was really responsible for my getting the Legion of Honor. And the Legion of Honor was sent in by this Colonel Chris Stark here in Springfield. He's a lawyer in Springfield, but he is a parachutist, and he is an Army veteran. And he found out about me, and I met him, very nice friends, and he sent everything, and it ended up, this Valerie, her name is Valerie Gaudier Cardin, C-A-R-D-I-N, Lovely girl, 39 years old. She works at a school, but she also raises money for the World War II veterans who were there at Normandy on the invasion. She gives them money to help them with their expenses to come over there. And she just gets donations. She gets some school children's parties, whatever it is. She just go around and begs for money, and she sends as much money as she can to the veterans that want to come back. And she helped me 2 years ago. And last year I was helped by Jeffrey Hutchins and Bobby Allison in Springfield. Sent me over there last year. They gave me the money, all my expenses. Two boys here in Springfield, but well-known in Springfield. Jeff Hutchins and Bobby Allison.
And you were able to pay Valerie back with some hospitality of your own.
The 82nd Airborne loves Valerie, and they invite her every year to come to the United States for their reunion, the 82nd Airborne. So they pay her expenses and bring her to Springfield, bring her to wherever they're going to be.
Right.
So I found out she was coming last October. So I asked her, would you come through Springfield and see me? She said, yes, I'd be glad to, Jack. So she came to my house, stayed with me. For my wife's deceased, 39 years old, and I mean, she is good looking. My brother-in-law lives on one side of me. The lady I'm going with, her grandson, lives on the other side of me. So I was guarded very well, and she was protected in my house. But she stayed with me 5 days. And I took her everywhere and let her meet people. We had a wonderful time. But I'm just paying her back for what she does for all the veterans. And all the veterans love her, believe me. They all go to see her when they go back to the Union.
As we get close to wrapping things up, Jack, how would the experiences of your time in service, how did they affect your life? What?
You know, a lot of the men came back, they talk about traumas. I didn't talk, for 50 years, I didn't talk about a thing about the war until I met Ralph Manley. And Ralph Manley and I started going around making speeches. And a lot of people, the boys don't like to talk, some of the veterans will not talk about their services, and I see the reason why. But the reason I talk about it, I was no hero. I was nothing but a lifeguard trying to save a life. My heroes, as I told you, were the ones who were in the water, drowning, and they were killed. They were my heroes that I was with.
And I'm going to turn this over to Brian here in just a second, but I wanted to conclude my part of it by getting your opinion about the Coast Guard today. What's your experience with not only the active duty and reserve Coast Guard, but also the Coast Guard Auxiliary here in Springfield?
It's wonderful. I was very happy to meet you and the rest. I didn't even know we had a Coast Guard flotilla, see, until I met you. And it's wonderful that you have it and keep it up, because that's what we're needed. And the little magazine I sent you, I take that all the time, and that kept me in all the Coast Guard news. I kept right up to date with the Coast Guard.
Brian, you have some questions?
Dude, Jack, I was wondering if you could tell me about what Springfield was like in the 1930s before you enlisted going to high school here. What was some of your favorite places to go? And
Oh, yeah. We used a place called Happy Hill. There was a dance hall there, and a nice band, Jerry Pettit's band, and that's the place we'd always go. I was in high school, you had to be careful, no drinking or anything else, of course you did a little bit. But after every football game or after practice in the evening, we'd always run down to Happy Hill to get your date and have a dance. Or we go out to a place towards Stafford, Missouri. There's a place called the Anchor. A very nice place to go out there. All it was Coca-Cola's, all it was in the machine, and you could dance there. There wasn't an awful lot you could do, and our population was about 70,000 about that time. But there was enough for us to do in Springfield, Missouri.
yeah. So tell me a little bit about playing baseball for the Yankees AA team. How did you get recruited to do that? What position?
Right out of high school, Tom Greenway, the old Yankee scout, he's the one who signed Mickey Mantle. And people don't know, but he also signed Jackie Robinson, the first one. He found he was working for the Dodgers at that time, and they sent him down to Los Angeles, he was playing football, to sign Jackie Robinson. And Tom Greenway signed Jackie Robinson, the first colored man. And I started out just playing baseball in high school, and Tom Greenway came to Jim Ewing, my baseball coach. He said we needed a utility player down at Joplin, played the Joplin Miners. He said we got a couple of boys injured, and said they don't want to send us any for the camp, so I'll take the boys out of Springfield. Well, he wanted to get LaRue Savage, a terrific baseball player in Springfield, but he'd already signed with Cleveland Indians, got a pro contract. So Jack Hamlin's a good infielder, take him. Well, I didn't actually get to play in too many games for it, but I signed 3-day contracts, only when I was needed. Did that for a year. and it's something like 21 times that I've signed
Wow.
to a contract with them until I actually, I got sick in Salina, Kansas one night when I contacted what they call the rheumatic fever.
Yeah.
And that ended me right there playing there. But then after I quit pro baseball player, come back to Springfield, I was playing semi-pro baseball. And I played with the old Patton Creamers for a while, and also played with the Springfield Generals. Well, we had Whitey Herzog on our team. We had Jerry Lumpy. We had a guy named Bob Black, Detroit Tigers. Well, we won the state championship in '53 and '54, and we went to the national tournament in Wichita, Kansas. And the second year, the first year, Whitey Herzog did not go with us, but the second year in '54, Whitey Herzog went. And we went to the finals, and the Boeing Bombers beat us out in the finals at Wichita and in the National Semi-Pro.
Did you, when you were with the Yankees, did you get to meet anybody, any of the big stars at the
I can tell you
time?
one story. One day I was in my office after I quit playing baseball, and Tom Greenway came by my office. He said, "Jack, I got a little gift for you. My son doesn't want it." He handed me a baseball jersey, a Babe Ruth road jersey.
Wow.
I kept that for years. I took it to every bar that I ever went, took it in and showed it off. It was in the back of my pickup truck at a little farm over the other side of Marshfield. I'd take it down there, and I'd forget all about it. It was in my truck. I'd go into a place to eat or something. Didn't lock, but here's that jersey in my baseball in my truck. Well, I finally sold it, and it quite a bit of money.
I bet.
But Tom Greenway gave me that. I got a lot of pictures of it. I even took it to California to have it authenticated. I got a big letter and everything else on it.
Wow. That's a really neat story.
It had his name and everything.
Wow.
And it's in a bar. They tell me, I don't know where, they tell me it's in a bar in Tulsa, Missouri now. Tulsa, Oklahoma.
Huh. Where were you when you heard about D-Day? Or I'm sorry, Pearl Harbor.
I was in the front yard. I was playing catch with some of the neighbors' kids, and my wife called me. My mother's my wife. And she said, this war's been declared, being bombed or something. And so we all were in the house and listened to it.
Yeah.
But I was home over on North Douglas.
Tell me a little bit about meeting and working under Jack Dempsey.
I met Jack Dempsey personally. I was out on the street, and I was out on the street and not too far from Algiers. And he was driving in a truck, in a big car. And I had another guy with me, another Coast Guard guy, I forget who it was, Bill Joe White from Springfield. We were both Coast Guard. And he stopped to pick us up. I didn't know who he was. And he introduced himself. I'm Jack Dempsey. At the time, I didn't even recognize the name or what it was. Later on, I go, Jack Dempsey, what's that? And he was world champion boxing champion.
Yeah.
And he was the commander there in Manhattan,
Yeah.
New York. It's the most wonderful fellow. Really, I wasn't with him very long, but just a time, just a cordial and nice, you never want to talk to him.
Well, thank you very much. I really appreciate it.
Really, it's my pleasure.
Is
Again,
there-
I say, a lot of people don't like to talk about their services, but it took me a long time before I want to talk about it, but the young children, and I have had the pleasure of speaking to a lot of the schools, and they're very knowledgeable, they're ready for you. They got good questions, and I'm very happy to answer them because they deserve to know.
Mhm.
And I think I have the knowledge to tell them what I saw, and I can give it to them from a livable language.